And good morning, everyone. Happy Wednesday morning to you, and welcome back to Morning Musings. Well, I've used my little puffer, but it doesn't seem to have taken effect yet. Maybe it'll kick in here directly. Okay, back to Isaiah chapter 52. We're talking about the time of the harvest, Sukkot, the end of the age, the time for the end of the miraculous gifts. Over the last couple of days, I've shared with you the background of Isaiah chapter 52, how it relates to 1 Corinthians chapter 13, how 1 Corinthians 13 was anticipating the face to face. And I've been sharing with you that this incredibly important motif of face to face has to do with it's all about relation. It is all about covenant relation, and it's all about dwelling in the presence of God refers to an intimate relationship with God. And it goes back to the language of the Tanakh, that language indicating that when Israel dwelt in the presence of God, when Abraham dwelt before the presence of God, when Adam and Eve dwelt before the presence of God in the garden, they were well pleasing. When Adam and Eve sinned, they were cast out of the presence of God. And yet God promised that of the seed of woman, and Adam promised Abraham that of his seed, all nations of the earth would be blessed. Not just one nation, but all the nations, period, would be blessed through that singular seed. So while the biblical narrative comes from Adam and Eve to Abraham to Israel, and God was refining that promise, God is quite clear that the fulfillment of the original promise, Adamic promise, the fulfillment of the Abrahamic promise would actually be through, but not by, Torah, because the promised seed would come through Israel, but the actual fulfillment of the promise of the seed and the blessings, the inheritance of the seed, would be at the time when God put aside old covenant nationalistic Israel and recreated her in the image of a new man. That's what the New Testament basically is all about. Heralding the end of the old covenant form. Heralding the end of a form when they would conquer other nations with the sword. When they would no longer have a geocentric temple, priesthood, sacrifices, but all of the blessings would be in Messiah. And he is our dwelling place now. But again, at the end of the old covenant form. Okay. And so when we come to Isaiah 52, and we see this promise in the background of Hosea chapter 5 of how God had divorced Israel, departed from her, and put her to death. But he promised that in the last days he would return, he would remarry, and he would raise her up. Now, it's it's important to note at this point something that I didn't point out Monday and Tuesday. That is in Isaiah chapter 52, when the Lord said to Israel, let me read this Isaiah 52, 1 and 2 again. Awake, awake. Well, what are they? They're asleep. They're in darkness. They're dead in captivity. Put on your strength, O Zion. Put on your beautiful garments, O Jerusalem. For henceforth there shall no more come into thee the uncircumcised and the unclean. Shake yourself from the dust. This is death imagery. Arise, and in the Septuagint, this is from the Greek word anastasis. It's a conjugation, a form of, it's in the It's in the direct address form, and that's known as the vocative. But it's a call to resurrection. Anastasis is resurrection. By the way, this same word is found back in chapter 51 and verse 17, in which God says, awake, awake. See, same language. Stand up, O Jerusalem. You who have drunk at the hand of the Lord the cup of his fury, you have drunken the dregs of the cup of trembling and wrung them out. But you see in the previous verses, God says, I'm going to put my word in your heart, in your mind, so that you will say, this is my people, so that I will say, this is my people. Once again, this is my people. Okay, so yesterday we concluded, pardon me, by coming down to verse 7, in which he says, how beautiful upon the mountains are the feet of him that brings the good tidings, that publishes peace, that brings good tidings of good, that publishes salvation, that says unto Zion, your God reigns. Some translations say, our God reigns. So what is this all about? It's about the remarriage. It's about the raising, the resurrection. It's the restoration. It's the restoration to the presence of God. Now, at this point, I've got to point something out. In the dispensational world, we are told quite vehemently at times that Jesus came and offered the kingdom to Israel. But in the book, End Times Controversy, co-authored by Thomas Ice, Thomas Ice says that Christ came to legitimately offer the kingdom. Well, what kind of kingdom does Mr. Ice believe that Jesus came to offer? Oh, a restored, militaristic, nationalistic, geopolitical kingdom. The restoration of the physical national kingdom. Unfortunately, due to the Jewish unbelief, Thomas Ice says, that Jewish belief made it, quote, impossible, unquote, for Jesus to establish the kingdom. As a result of that rejection of Jesus's offer by Israel, the kingdom offer was withdrawn. And God thus postponed the offer of the kingdom until the time of the rapture, when the church, which had been established as kind of an interim plan B, plan on the part of God, because he didn't intend for the kingdom offer to be rejected. So the rejection of the kingdom offer by the Jews basically was an oops on the part of God. But as my good friend, late friend John Anderson used to say, the word oops is not in God's vocabulary. And that was well stated. So, at the time of the restoration of Israel, that message of the resurrection of Israel, of the restoration of Israel, of the remarriage of Israel, that message would go forth, and the prophet exults. How beautiful on the mountain are the feet of those who bring glad tidings, that publishes peace, that publishes salvation, that says unto the people, that says to Zion, the Zion that was in the grave, of 52, 1 and 2. The Zion that had been divorced. The Zion from whom God had departed and cast them out of his presence, cast them out from before his face. What we have to see, this is incredibly important. Paul, apostle to the Gentiles, who nevertheless went first to Israel, said that his mission was the fulfillment of Isaiah 52, verse 7. He quotes Isaiah 52, verse 7, verbatim, to speak of how the gospel was being preached into all of the world. This is Romans 10, verse 15, by the way. The gospel had been preached into all of the world, preached to all Israel, especially to Israel first, because after all, salvation is to all men, but to the Jew first, then to the Greek. Now listen very carefully. Since Paul quoted and applied Isaiah 52, verse 7, the message of the restoration, the message of the remarriage, the message of the resurrection of Israel was taking place in the first century. Guess what that means? That means the kingdom offer was not postponed. I love what Tom Holland in his book, The Divine Marriage, says. And this will be a rough paraphrase, and I apologize if anyone wants the specific quote. But Tom Holland, commenting on Romans chapter 11, verse 15. Romans chapter 11 verse 15 says, if the casting away of Israel turns to the riches for the world, then how much more shall their, that is Israel's, acceptance be except life from the dead? And Tom Holland says, Paul is not talking about some yet future far off restoration of Israel at some resurrection. Pardon me. No. He is saying that what Paul was preaching was that the resurrection of Israel was taking place in the first century. Now keep in mind that God said in the last days he would betroth Israel to himself again. It wouldn't be the same old Israel. There would be the righteous remnant of Israel, to be sure. But he said, I'll betroth you to me again. What did Paul say in 2 Corinthians chapter 11, verse 3? Writing to the church at Corinth, which was taken out of the synagogue along with Gentiles. I am jealous over you with a godly jealousy, for I have espoused you as a chaste virgin unto Christ. I have betrothed you. That's Hosea 2:19 to 23 being fulfilled. In a new body, in a new form. It was not national Israel being restored or remarried. It was the righteous remnant entering into a new covenant relationship, restored to be sure, raised up to be sure, resurrected to be sure, into the new one new man body, transformed from the corruptible old law to the incorruptible new covenant body of Jesus Christ. When Paul said that the gospel was being preached to Israel in fulfillment of Isaiah 52, he was saying no postponement of the kingdom, no delay, no oops on the part of God. God's promises were being fulfilled. Just as he would say in Romans chapter 11, verse 7, which is an incredibly powerful text that is so often overlooked. Israel has not achieved that to which he desired. Well, what did Israel want? Well, in the direct context, it's righteousness, but that would be in the kingdom because righteousness was to be part and parcel of the new covenant kingdom. Daniel 9:24. Israel has not attained that which he sought, but the elect, that's the righteous remnant coming into Christ, the elect has attained it. Folks, do you catch the power of that? The promise of Hosea 5 and 6, the promise of Isaiah 52 was being fulfilled in Christ and his new covenant body. Not just for one people, but for all people. But it began with the righteous remnant of Old Covenant Israel in fulfillment of those Testament promises. I'm out of time. Now, by the way, because Friday is July the 4th, I won't have a video on Friday. I hope I am laying the foundation sufficiently about what face to face meant, of how God was promising Old Covenant Israel that when he brought her out of sin, death, through the Messiah, he was going to be raising her from the dead. And Paul said that was taking place in the first century. And once again, that means no postponement of the kingdom, no delay. God was being faithful to his promises. Listen, hope you have an absolutely fantastic 4th of July. Celebrate the freedom that we have in America, that so many people around the world want to enjoy. And all these people who say America is an absolutely awful person. One talk show host woman said life in America right now is worse than it was under Hitler. Folks, such absolute utter garbage for someone to say that. Anyway, don't get me started. Off my soapbox. Have a fantastic weekend.